Hi everyone. So today we are going to talk about the characterization and purification of the chemical substance that we are having. So this time we will be taking a organic compound which is in solid state. Okay. So we're having it in solid state. A small powder like form will be having, so that we have to determine. Now how we are going to determine the compound is by the melting point. Why am I particularly using the melting point? Because if this is a pure organic compound that we are having, it is going to give a sharp melting point. It is going to give us a sharp melting point. And by knowing the sharp melting point, we can guess the compound which we are having. Okay. So this is the reason we are using this melting point to determine about this. I'm really sorry, to determine about this organic compound. Okay, so this is the aim of our experiment, to determine the melting point of a given organic compound. Okay, because sometime even if you don't know about the compound and you know the melting point, because if it is a pure one, it is going to have a sharp melting point, and because of the sharp melting point, you can tell us about the compound which is given to you, right? So what all is the apparatus that will be required here? Apparatus required, just give me a second. Yeah, so apparatus that will be required here is thermometer will be using, because we are talking about the melting point. So to check the melting point, obviously we require thermometer here. And then a porous plate will be required, or a china dish, or a simple petri dish you can use. A stirrer will be used. Heating arrangement is required. Iron stand will be required, and a tripod stand. And obviously thin capillaries, because by the help of those thin capillaries only we can determine the melting point of the compound, because we take the compound which you have to test, the organic compound whose melting point you have to check, we place it in this capillary tube, right? So these are our requirements which I've just told you. Now what are the chemicals that will be required here? Now the chemical required. Okay, one thing which is required here is a liquid paraffin. Liquid paraffin. Now, why do we require this liquid paraffin? We have to check the melting point of this organic compound. Then why am I talking about this liquid paraffin? The reason is because whatever compound you're having, you have to check that, but you will be using this liquid paraffin also because it has a very high boiling point. So this liquid is also required, because in this you are going to dip whatever content you're having. Okay, so it is having, you can write it down, it is used because it is having a very high boiling point, and that is the reason we'll be using it. Okay, now, and obviously the organic compound which you have to check. So these are the chemical requirements which we'll be having. Now how we are going to start with this is we'll be requiring a Bunsen burner. Now Bunsen burner is going to give the flame by which, okay, just don't use the complete flame, use the outer luminous part of this burner, because you have to use this so that you can cut the capillary tube. Okay, this capillary tube is open from both the end. Now what do we want? We just want to close it from one end. Okay, so that we can put the compound from this end, and so that it can be secured, it doesn't leaks out, right? So we need to close it from this end. So we will be using just a little amount of heat, so we just make sure that the only just the corner of this heat is used properly, and it is sealed from one end, and then you can place your compound in this capillary tube. Now we make sure that this tube is not too longer or too shorter, so the length should be approximately 8 to 10 centimeters long, so that you can clamp it with the thermometer, and the obviously the diameter will be somewhere around 1 mm. Okay, so this is our first requirement. Now what we have to do is just make sure that you have a petri dish in which you have taken your organic compound which you have to check whose melting point you're going to check. Okay, just make sure that you properly finely powder it. So you can use the spatula, just rub it over it so that you can make a proper fine particles, and then bring that capillary tube near it and just try to pour everything inside it. Okay, just try to pour the content in this, and once you're filled up till approximately a right size, and then you can just stop it and just tap it so that the content moves in a proper position. Just dab it properly on the surface so that the content moves down completely. And I would preferably say that you should use a Thiel's tube for performing this experiment. But in some of the schools, you don't have this Thiel's tube. Otherwise, this is the best one to determine about the melting point, because in this, the heating is uniform throughout. So if you have this in your lab, it is the best. Okay, because in this, okay, I'll tell you how this tube looks like. Yeah. So this is how it actually looks like this. Now these side arms, so when you're going to heat this now, so this part will be heated up, and by that a uniform distribution of the heat will be there in this complete setup. Okay, so by this side arm is designed to generate the conventional current, and that conventional current will heat the complete paraffin liquid in a proper way, and that cannot be done in a beaker in that better way. So if you don't have this Thiel's tube, then you can perform this experiment in the beaker. But if you have this, I would say that go with this Thiel's tube. Okay, so I'll be using this Thiel's tube, and then I will be telling you how to perform this experiment. And obviously just replace this with the beaker, and the same procedure will be there. Nothing will be changed much. Okay, so let me just rub a few parts so that I can draw the other parts. I hope everything till here is clear to everyone. So make sure that you have an iron stand so that everything can be clamped on a right position. Now this is the thermometer. Okay. This is your capillary tube. And just dip it in the Thiel's tube. Or in place of this, you can also have a beaker. Okay, make sure that the content comes to a right position. This liquid will be the paraffin one, liquid paraffin you have to use. This is the liquid paraffin. Liquid paraffin. And in this capillary tube, you have used your organic compound, which you are going to heat up, right? And this is your thermometer. Now, thermometer is there to record the readings, right? And this Thiel's tube is here just to provide a proper heating. So when you will heat it, you don't have to heat it from here. It is the wrong arrangement. Okay, so where you have to use, if you use a beaker, let's say if you're having the beaker, then you have to heat it from here. But when you're using a Thiel's tube, you have to make sure that you heat this side. I'll use a different color. You have to make sure that you're heating this part, not this part, because once you will heat this part of the Thiel's tube, the conventional current will be developed, and by that, a uniform heating will be given to the complete liquid paraffin. And because this liquid paraffin has a high boiling point, a good amount of heat will be given to the organic compound. Now, make sure that you note two readings here. Now, what is the first reading? Make sure that T1, which is the first reading, this is going to tell us about the temperature at which it has started to melt. This is the temperature when it has begun to melt. Okay, this is the temperature when you feel that yes, now this compound has started to melt. Okay, and T2 will be that temperature when you say that the complete melting is being done. Okay, when the compound is completely melt, This is the second temperature. Now, why am I recording the T1 temperature when it has just started to melt, and T2 is the completely melted temperature? Because now I'm going to take the average of both of these. Okay. So this is the reason I am taking the T1 and T2 to temperature. Now just take the average of the two readings. So that will be T1 plus T2 divided by 2. That is how you take the average, right? So this is how you are going to get the melting point of the organic compound. And I hope this is also clear that why we are talking about the melting temperature, melting point so much, because if this will be a pure organic compound, if it is a pure organic compound, obviously it is going to have a sharp melting point. If it is having any kind of impurities, then the melting point will not be sharp. And that is the reason we are determining the melting point here. I hope this is clear to you all. Now just make sure that the things which you're using here should be appropriately kept, like this thermometer and this capillary should be kept together. You can use a tape or any other thing to properly keep it in position. So this is your complete experiment and the setup how you have to perform it. I hope it is clear to you all. I'll be coming up with the questions also related to this concept. I hope this is clear, and whatever doubts you have, make sure that you all write it down in the comment box. Now we'll be meeting up some another time. Till then, take care. Bye bye, all of you.